Hello. So today we're talking about Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. What can I say about this book? It is an absolute banger. I had seen lots of people talking about this book, lots of people talking about Anthony Bourdain's TV shows. He's written a few books as well. A couple of months ago, people were just really raving about it, and I kept on getting a lot of it on my social media feeds. So then, okay, right, let's check it out. I'd not really heard of Anthony Bourdain before I read this book. And I believe this one is his first one, which is non-fiction. He did write some fiction books as well, but this one is kind of his breakout hit. This is the book which pushed him from being a chef into being a celebrity chef, and then led to TV shows, all that kind of thing, which I've not read. I've not watched the TV shows. So, what do I think about this book? This book is like, it's kind of like thrilling to read. I think you'll particularly enjoy it if you've worked in the service industry and hospitality, whether that's front of house or back of house. Me personally, I've worked in front of house, not for very long, but I did work in front of house for a couple of months. And so it was quite funny to sort of get a view into the other side of the kitchen. And it's a dirty book, you know. It is sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's kind of badass, really. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it's quite funny to get that little peek behind the curtain. And don't get me wrong, this book, this is the 25th anniversary edition, so things are probably a bit different now in a kitchen as they were then. And he kind of writes that in the afterword, but it's still really funny. So I started this book, and I found maybe the first sort of fifth of the book, first quarter maybe, I was reading it. I was enjoying it, but I didn't get gripped. And so I've been reading it since November, and then I came back to this book literally the last 2 days, and I've just whizzed through it. It's just completely grabbed me. And I would say that if you're going to read this book, just be a little bit patient as you get into the book, because it does get really good. But for me, I needed a little bit of time just to sort of settle into the story. I think it was quite, for someone who hasn't worked in a kitchen, I'm not that familiar with cooking, French cuisine, this kind of fine dining kind of angle. There was a lot of words I didn't really know what I meant, like posh, words for posh foods. But once you kind of get through that, you don't need to understand that to enjoy the book. It's really good regardless. One of my favorite bits in this book is Bourdain. He talks about almost like a symbiotic relationship between front of house and back of house. And it's so true. It's so true. I didn't work that long in hospitality, but there is a little bit of side swipes, little favors you do for each side. And they are like two teams. Sometimes there's a bit of drama between front of house, back of house. Me personally, I was always cool with the chefs, but it is true. And I definitely brought back some funny memories for me of like sneaking biscuits to the chefs or nice drinks. And then sometimes you get something back in return on the sneaky. Sorry, Black Rabbit people. They'll never watch this, it doesn't matter. But it's really funny and it's really true, and I kind of quite amusing that is across the industry. The cool thing about this book is Anthony Bourdain, he's very upfront about how hard and the work is, how backbreaking it is, the long hours. He's very explicit about the toxic sort of environment that you have with your sort of colleagues, and all of these crazy sort of events that happen, these just random crazy pranks and things that happen in the kitchen. And it's like terror. It sounds terrible. And he says that in the book. He's like, look, if you're not tough, you're not gonna make it in a kitchen. And unless you're a certain type of crazy, he's kind of like, why would you want to do that to yourself? But he paints this picture in a way that it almost makes you want to be doing it anyway. Like it's a real wit and a real humor to the way he writes, which makes you want to try it for yourself. I won't be trying it for myself. You've got to be tough, and it's hard work working in the kitchen. But the way he talks about it, you can feel the passion this man has for what his occupation was through the pages, through the words. You can really feel it, and it's so funny the way he writes and the stories he tells. It's a really good book if you need something that's going to make you laugh. It's not a comedy book. It's non-fiction. He's talking about his life, but it's just some of the crazy antics are worth reading, I would say. Quite funny. And one of the funny things about this book is Anthony Bourdain, he gives you almost like these do's and don'ts. He kind of starts some advice for people with their own cooking, and he's quite no nonsense. It's like, you don't need all these fancy sets of knives. You don't need all the crappy gadgets and stuff. He says you need a good knife, and he says thick pans. Oh, and a mandolin. I think he said mandolins are very useful. Apparently so. So that's the way this book has changed me. I'm going to be looking for some thick pans because all my stuff sticks, and I know why now. Apparently you need a thick stainless steel pan, so I'll look out for one of those. And he also talks about cooking fresh. And I think this is something which is becoming more relevant now than perhaps it was previously. There's been like an era of convenience foods. And I do feel like the trends are shifting, that people are wanting more whole foods again. They're wanting home-cooked food, fresh things. So it's really cool to see that in his book. Basically says, and I'll admit this, I have loads of powdered and dried spices. He's like, throw out the powdered sawdust and just buy fresh and just cook fresh. So that was really interesting, really funny. I quite enjoyed that part. And he also, I don't want to spoil this book, because if you're reading the review, you've either read the book or you're thinking about reading it. So hopefully it hasn't got too many spoilers in. But it's really funny. It's a really funny book. There's lots of these little cultural references that you just pick up, that he just throws down, and all these silly nicknames for people. And it feels like you can feel the banter. Like it's just like he paints the kitchen as this sort of testosterone-filled place, and there's not many women working in kitchens back then. And the women who were kind of not treated great unless they were, sort of tough enough to kind of give it back and get people off their back. But it's a really funny book. So overall, if I were going to condense it down into 30 seconds review, I would say, look, this book is dirty, it's sordid, it's dirty, it's grisly at the edges, and it shows you the sort of dirty underbelly of what you see in a restaurant, behind sort of the kitchen doors, the posh exterior, the posh dining room. You get to see what really happens in the action. And it's really funny. He says, don't eat the fish on a Monday, because the order comes in on the Tuesday. So if you're having the fish on the Monday, it's been there a whole week. And he says about hollandaise. Don't eat hollandaise unless you're sure it's very fresh, but apparently it never is. And he also says about mussels, which makes me laugh, because that's one of those things I've never had, but it's always seen as quite a fancy, posh thing to do. And he basically says a lot of places aren't storing them properly, or they're not really checking them, or whatever. So that's maybe something I don't feel quite so bad about, the fact that I haven't tried. But yeah, basically, all in all, good book, would recommend it. I would say it's quite dirty, but if you're willing to sort of get through the crudeness, I think you'll really enjoy it. It's well worth a read. It was worth the hype, in my opinion, and it is one of my new favourites. I need to read more books anyway, so I can sort of branch out, expand my palate, and I will be trying my best to expand my palate a little bit in my sort of eating after reading this book. It is really inspiring, and definitely, I would say, a good read. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.